Elizabeth Chen put her fingers on her head as the emergency room doors swung open at 1:47 a.m. Someone else was coming in. The fast footsteps in the hallway told her this person needed help away. Elizabeth Chen had been working nights at Memorial Hospital for a time. 7 years. She usually knew what to expect. Elizabeth Chen had a feeling about these things. Her instincts were always right. The paramedics brought in a man on a stretcher, could not see his face because of the oxygen mask. Elizabeth got to work away, her hands already going for the patient's chart that one of the ambulance workers was holding out to her. When she looked at the chart, she saw the man's face for a moment. He had bruises and cuts over him from the crash, but there was something about him that caught her eye. It was not really how he looked, how he was lying there even though he was hurting. Elizabeth looked at the patient again, the man on the stretcher. She thought he seemed different. This person had just been in a bad car accident. They were being very calm and quiet about it, which seemed strange. They had a dignity about them that you do not usually see in someone who has just gone through something so terrible. The car collision was very traumatic. This person was handling it in a very calm and dignified way. Elizabeth walked down the corridor, said room 428. The lights above made everything look cold and uninviting. Elizabeth was used to this. She had spent a lot of time in these kinds of places. People usually came here when they were feeling scared or weak. Elizabeth wanted to help them feel a little better when they were at their worst. She had given her life to this work. Elizabeth thought that if she could make these times a little easier for people, then that would be a good thing. The patient was all settled in, and the first checks were done, so Elizabeth went back to see how he was doing. She checked the patient's vitals. The patient was awake now. The oxygen mask was not on his face anymore. The patient had a jawline and dark eyes. The patient's dark eyes looked like they were taking in everything around the patient with observation. "Morning," Elizabeth said in a gentle voice, being careful to sound nice and professional at the same time. "I am Elizabeth. I will be your nurse tonight. How are you feeling tonight? I mean, really, how is Elizabeth's patient feeling?" Elizabeth wants to know so she can help her patient. The man's eyes met the woman's eyes. The woman felt something change in the air between the man and the woman. This was a thing you could easily miss it, but the woman knew it was there. He said, "I am not doing great." He gave a smile, but it did not make his eyes happy. He also said, "I have been really bad before." "This is not so bad." Elizabeth asked the man if he could tell her his name. She was getting ready to update his chart. "James," he said. "My name is James Sullivan." Over the hour, Elizabeth did her rounds, but she could not stop thinking about room 428. There was something about James that really caught her attention. Maybe it was the way James said thank you for everything she did for him, no matter how small it was. Maybe it was because James actually listened when Elizabeth explained what she was doing with him and why she was doing it. Most of the time, patients ignored Elizabeth. They did not trust her and asked her a lot of questions. James was different. He did not do either of those things. Elizabeth found herself thinking about James in room 428 again and again. She came home at 3 a.m. to see how he was doing. He was still awake. The city lights were on outside. He was staring at them through the window. The city lights were really pretty. They were shining bright below where they lived. She asked me if I was having trouble sleeping, and at the time she was fixing the medicine that was dripping into my vein. "I have a lot of things on my mind," James said. Hospitals are not really places to relax, James thought, because they are always so busy and noisy. James did not like hospitals because they are not peaceful, James explained. Elizabeth laughed softly to herself. No, the hospital rooms are really not that great. I mean, there is all this beeping from the machines, and the sound of footsteps is always there. And people are always coming in to interrupt you. The hospital rooms are necessary for people to get better. The beeping and the footsteps and all the interruptions are just part of being. In a hospital room, he asked her if she minded working at night. She was really surprised that he actually wanted to know. The way he said it sounded like he really cared about what she thought about working nights. Elizabeth said she really likes it. She pulled up a chair. The floor was very quiet that night, so she had a time to talk. During the day, everything is in a hurry. There are lots of things to do, like procedures and visitors. and doctors walking to see people. At night, the hospital is different. People are not so careful about what they say. They have conversations, the kind that means something, and Elizabeth likes the night because of this. The night is when people talk about what's really on their mind, and Elizabeth likes to hear these conversations. She thinks the night is a time to get to know people, like the people who work on the floor, because they are more relaxed and they talk about real things. James nodded thoughtfully. I get what you are saying. The quiet times can show us things that we do not see when it is noisy. Elizabeth and the man talked for 20 minutes that night. They did not say anything personal. They just talked about things like the weather and the city. They also talked about the peace that existed in the early morning hours. Elizabeth noticed that it was easy to talk to the man. This surprised Elizabeth. She stayed in his room longer than she needed to. Elizabeth looked forward to visiting him. She really wanted to talk to him during her next check-in. The man and Elizabeth had a conversation that first night. The second night was really special. James wanted to know more about Elizabeth's life. He asked her about her family. What made her want to be a nurse? Elizabeth started talking about things she never told people. She talked about her grandmother, who was very sick when Elizabeth was a girl. The nurses who took care of her grandmother were really kind. Elizabeth thought they were amazing. That is why Elizabeth wanted to be a nurse. She loved being a nurse because she could help people, even if it was a small thing. Elizabeth liked the feeling of making a difference in people's lives, like the nurses did for her grandmother. James listened to Elizabeth. She felt happy to share these stories with him. Elizabeth really loved being a nurse. She was glad she could talk to James about nursing. James said that finding work that really matters to you is rare. When she was done, finding work that actually means something to you is not something that happens every day. James thought that finding a job that you really care about is very rare. Elizabeth asked what I do. She wanted to know what my job is. For work, I mean, Elizabeth said. James stopped for a moment. She saw the way his face changed, like he was hiding something. I am in business, he said, not really telling her anything. It is not as good as what you do, James said about his business. Elizabeth could tell he did not want to talk about it, so she let it go. The thing is, everyone has things they do not want to talk about, things that are just for them. Elizabeth thought this was okay. She figured people should be able to keep things to themselves if they want to. Elizabeth respected people's privacy, including his. By the night, Elizabeth found herself thinking about James when she was not working. She would be at home trying to sleep during the day. Her mind would start thinking about James. She would think about what James was doing if James was resting. If James was in pain. It had been a long time since Elizabeth thought about someone like that. When she got to work that evening, she walked a bit faster to room 428. James was sitting up in bed. He looked a lot better than he did the night before. The bruises on James were not as bad as they were before. James had some color back in his face. She said, "You look better." She really meant it. She was genuinely pleased. James said that he feels better now. He has to be honest with himself. The thought of leaving is not something that James is really excited about. James is actually feeling a little sad about leaving. Elizabeth's heart skipped a beat. She said most people really want to leave this place soon as they can. The man said that most people do not have a reason to stay. His eyes looked into hers. The meaning of the words he spoke was very clear. Elizabeth felt her cheeks get warm. She started checking his chart to keep herself busy. She wanted to stay calm and professional. On the inside, Elizabeth was feeling something different. The walls that Elizabeth had put up around her heart were starting to break down. Elizabeth had built these walls over a time. Now, they were beginning to crack. That was a big change. For Elizabeth, that night James and Elizabeth talked for a long time. They were still talking when it was almost 4 a.m. James told Elizabeth about how his job was getting to him, about how he felt. Stuck in a life that looked great too. Other people, but it did not feel that way to him. He felt like something was missing. Elizabeth said she knew how he felt. She had her problems with feeling lonely, even when she was around people. She had built a life that was comfortable and safe. Sometimes she wondered if it was too quiet, if she was too alone. James and Elizabeth both felt like they were living a life that was not really theirs. "I think that I have made myself very independent, and that is why I have trouble letting people get close to me," she said. "I mean, I have gotten so used to doing things on my own that I do not know how to let someone into my life," the woman admitted. "This is something that I have been thinking about a lot lately. I think it is true that I have forgotten how to let people in, like my friends and family, and even the people I care about, such as my loved ones." James said this in a voice. He thought that maybe this is not so bad. When you do decide to let someone into your life, it will be because you really want that person in your life, not because you need that person. James felt that this is a thing about being careful with the people you let in. You will really want to be with that person, not just be with them because you need someone. The connection between Elizabeth and James was really strong now. It was like something in the air that you could feel making every time they looked at each other. Does every word they said feel important? Elizabeth knew she was doing something by feeling this way. James was the person she was supposed to be helping. It was not right for her to have these feelings. At the same time, Elizabeth felt more alive than she had in a long time. The connection between Elizabeth and James was making her feel things she had not felt in years. On the night the doctor told James that he would be going home soon, Elizabeth felt a knot in her stomach when she heard the news. She knew this was going to happen. Elizabeth was not ready for James to leave the hospital. Elizabeth had gotten used to James being, and she did not want him to go. That evening, she went to his room. James was already awake. He was waiting for her. "Elizabeth," he said before she could say anything, "this is a tough situation. There are a lot of rules we have to follow. I have to ask Elizabeth something." Her heart was pounding. She felt really scared. Her heart was beating very fast. The waiting was making her heart pound more. "When I leave this hospital, can I see you again outside of the hospital? I really want to see you at a different place, outside of the hospital." Elizabeth stood frozen. Every sensible part of her brain was telling her to be careful. She did not really know this man. The entire relationship between Elizabeth and this man existed in this place, in this world. Life outside is different. Life outside is messy. Elizabeth was aware that real life was not simple like this. Real life was complicated for Elizabeth. There was another part of her that had been quiet for a long time. This part of her was now shouting something different. The woman had been ignoring this part of her for long, but now the woman was hearing what this part of her had to say. This part of her, the woman, was saying something that was very different from what the rest of her was thinking. "Yes," she heard herself say. "Yes, I would like that." The coffee shop that James had picked was right in the middle of downtown. It was a nice place with big windows that went all the way from the floor to the ceiling, and it did not have a lot of extra decorations. Elizabeth got there 10 minutes before she was supposed to. Her hands were sweaty even though it was an autumn day. She had put on clothes a few times that morning. She finally decided to wear a blue dress. This dress made Elizabeth feel good about herself. She did not feel like she was wearing too much. James was already at the table when Elizabeth got there. Got up when he saw her. Elizabeth saw a way that he looked really different when he was not in the hospital. The bruises were. He was not wearing a hospital gown anymore. He had on a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly. His dark hair was styled nicely. James looked like a successful person now. Seemed of distant, though not like the James she talked to at the hospital. Elizabeth remembered the nights they spent talking. This James looked different. Hospital James was not wearing a suit like this James was. This James looked polished, put together. The man said, "You came," and he was really happy to see me. His smile was very nice. It seemed like he was being totally honest. Elizabeth said that she would do it. She sat down in the chair that was across from the man. James and Elizabeth ordered coffee. For a while, things felt like they always did. James asked Elizabeth about her shift at the hospital. She told James about a kid who was really scared of getting a shot. Elizabeth was able to calm him down by telling him stories about her cat. James laughed when Elizabeth was talking, and his eyes got all wrinkly at the corners. This was something Elizabeth had seen James do before when they talked at the hospital. As they talked, Elizabeth started to notice things that she had not seen before in the hospital, where it was not very bright. The watch that James was wearing on his wrist was really expensive. It was probably worth more than Elizabeth's car. When the person who brings food came with their coffee, she spoke to James in a respectful way, which seemed too much for someone who was just having coffee. And Elizabeth could see a black car parked by the side of the road. A driver was standing next. To the car that James had arrived in, the black car was still there. James, she said, finally setting down her cup. I need to ask you something about this, James. He looked at her. She saw a little fear in his eyes. She could tell he was worried about something when she saw that look on his face. The fear was there for a moment, but she noticed it. He met her gaze, and she saw that fear again. It was a flicker of apprehension that crossed his face. I remember when we were at the hospital, you did not say much about what you do. You wanted to be left alone. You did not want to talk about your life. Now that I see you here, I think about all the things you have not told me about yourself. What is your job, really? You are a person, and I do not know much about you. Who are you, really? What is your life like? I want to know more about your life and your work. James was quiet for a long time. He looked at his hands, then back at her. I knew we would have this talk. I have been worried about it and getting ready for it at the time. Elizabeth said this to me in a soft voice. Just tell me the truth. My full name is James Sullivan, he said. I am the CEO of Sullivan Industries. Sullivan Industries is a company that works with technology and investments. We have offices in 12 countries. When I got hurt, it was in the news. My assistant thought we should tell people what happened. She wanted to get special doctors and security people. I said no. I went to Memorial Hospital. I only used my first name, James, because I wanted the doctors and nurses to treat me like anyone else for a change. I wanted to be treated like a person, not like the CEO of Sullivan Industries. Elizabeth felt her chest get really tight. She had a feeling that he was not telling her everything. This was a lot worse than she thought. You are that James Sullivan. I have seen your company's name on a lot of buildings. Yes, he said. Elizabeth, I was not honest with you from the start, and I am sorry. You have to understand something. When you came into my room that night, you really saw me. You did not see how money I have or what I do. You saw Elizabeth. You saw me as a person who was really hurt and needed someone to take care of me. This is very rare for me, Elizabeth. In my world, people usually do not see me like that. They see my money or what I can do for them, not me, Elizabeth. You saw me. That is very rare. Elizabeth got up fast and her chair made a loud noise on the floor. Some people who were sitting near her looked over. I need to get for a bit, Elizabeth said, because she needed some air. Elizabeth really needed some air. Elizabeth, please, James said as he stood up. He tried to take her hand. She pulled her hand away from him. James really wanted Elizabeth to listen to him. No, I just need a minute to think. She picked up her purse, walked towards the door. Her mind was racing with thoughts. She really needed to think about the purse. What was inside it, but her mind kept going back to what had just happened and the door she was walking towards. Outside, the city was really loud. Cars were. People were walking by in a hurry. They were all going somewhere on this Saturday afternoon. Elizabeth stood with her back against the wall at the coffee shop. She was trying to breathe. The wall was made of brick. Elizabeth was leaning against the brick wall, trying to calm down. The city noise was around her, the noise of the city. The money did not bother her. The fact that he had not told her the truth was not the main issue. What really got to her was the fear that came out of nowhere. This fear was like a wave that crashed over her. She was scared that she had started to have feelings for someone who lived a life that was very different from her life. The hospital was a place where they had gotten close, but she was worried that their relationship would not be strong enough to survive in the real world. She was afraid that she had been silly to think that they could actually make this work. Fear of their worlds was what bothered her. The fear that she had let herself care for him was a problem. After a minute, James came out of the coffee shop. James did not go to her away. James just stood a ways away from her and waited for a bit. Elizabeth said she should go. She did not look at him. She just did not meet his eyes. Elizabeth felt like it was time for her to leave, so she said it loud. He said to me, "Can I drive you home?" He was being really nice. He wanted to make sure I got home safely. He asked me if I wanted him to drive me home. No, thank you. I will take the bus. Elizabeth. The way he said her name was filled with sadness. This made her look up at him. I know you are upset with me, he said. I know you might need some time to think. I want you to know that what happened in the hospital was real. The things we talked about, the way we connected, the feelings I had when we were together, all of that was true. When I was with you, I felt like I could be myself. That is something I have not felt in a long time. What we shared in that hospital, it was real. Elizabeth said, I believe you, and she really meant it. Then she looked at James and said she did not know if she could be part of the world of James. She told James that she did not know if she wanted to be part of the world of James. She walked away before he could say anything. Her eyes were blurry from crying. She did not want to cry in front of him. She wanted to wait until she was on the bus and going home. The bus was a place for her to let her tears fall. She got on the bus and it started moving, then she let her tears fall. She was really sad. She just let it all out. The bus was taking her home. The next few days were really blurry for Elizabeth. She did her job and all that. She checked to see if her patients were doing okay. She gave them their medicine. She tried to make them feel better. The whole time her mind was somewhere else. She could not stop thinking about what James Sullivan said to her at the coffee shop. Elizabeth kept thinking about what would have happened if she had not walked away from James Sullivan. Then she remembered all the reasons why she should stay away from James Sullivan. She thought that getting close to James Sullivan was not an idea at all. Elizabeth kept thinking about James Sullivan and what he was. Like her coworkers saw that something was different about her. "Are you okay?" her friend Diana asked when they were taking a break. "You have not been talking lately," Diana said to her. Her friend was worried about the change in her. Elizabeth said she was just tired. That was not true. James gave her lots of space. He did not call her, send her a text message. He did not go to the hospital to see her either. There was one message from James, and he sent it 2 days after they had coffee together. The message said, "When you are ready to talk, I will be here. There is no pressure on you. Take all the time you need to think about things. James will be here." Elizabeth was working her 4th night shift since they had met. She got assigned to room 412. The patient in room 412 was a lady named Mrs. Patterson. Mrs. Patterson had pneumonia, was in the hospital for that. When Elizabeth checked the 4 that was connected to Mrs. Patterson looked at Elizabeth with sharp eyes that seemed to know. "Everything Mrs. Patterson said to me, you look really upset." "Dear," her voice was a little rough. It was clear she was trying to be nice. Elizabeth said, "I am fine," without thinking about it. The woman went on to say, "I have been alive for 82 years. She said this. Then she added, "I know what heartache looks like when I see it." "Is it man trouble that is causing you pain?" Elizabeth found herself smiling even though things were really tough. Is it that easy to see? Only to someone who has lived enough to recognize the signs of something being off. Do you want to talk about the signs of this thing? In that hospital room, it was really quiet. This was at 2 in the morning. Elizabeth started talking to this stranger she did not know. She told the stranger everything about James. She told the stranger about the connection Elizabeth had with James. Elizabeth also told the stranger about what James had said and how it scared. Elizabeth, Mrs. Patterson, did not say a word. She just listened to what Elizabeth had to say. When Elizabeth was done talking, Mrs. Patterson was silent for a while. Then the elderly woman started to speak to Elizabeth. "I want to share something with you. I was married to my husband for 58 years before he passed away. You want to know the secret to our marriage? My husband and marriage were very important to me. We chose my husband and our marriage every day. We did this because my husband and our marriage mattered to me, not because it was always easy. My husband and our marriage were worth it. Love is not about finding someone who fits into your life easily. Love is about finding someone, like my husband, who's worth changing your life for," Elizabeth said. "What if this does not work out?" She was really worried. "What if I open myself up to the situation and the whole thing falls apart?" Elizabeth asked again, thinking about the possibilities with the situation. Mrs. Patterson said, "If you do not try, then you will hurt. You will hurt because you will think about what could have happened. You will. You will hurt, and you will heal, and you will be glad that you tried. If you just walk away from this without even trying, you will always wonder what would have happened. That kind of regret, sweetheart, is something that will stay with you for a very long time, a lot longer than the pain of heartbreak from the relationship." Elizabeth walked out of that room. Tears were falling down her face. She went to the staff bathroom. Elizabeth looked at herself in the mirror. Then Elizabeth made a decision. The morning after Elizabeth finished working, she got out her phone and wrote a message to James. She said, "Can we talk? There is a park near the hospital where I work. I will be at the park at 10 a.m. if James can make it to the park to talk to Elizabeth. He got back to me fast. He said, I will be there. Elizabeth went home. Did what she usually does to get ready. She took a shower, put on a pair of jeans and a sweater that felt really good on her. Then she went to Riverside Park. The morning was really cool. The trees were looking amazing with all the fall colors. Elizabeth found a bench where she could see the river. She just sat there and waited for something to happen at Riverside Park. James arrived at 10. He looked different this time, wearing jeans and a simple jacket. This was like the James she had met in the hospital, not the James she saw at the coffee shop who looked like a polished executive. James sat beside her, keeping a distance from her. The man said, "Thank you for getting in touch." With him in a voice, Elizabeth said she was sorry she ran away. It was not fair to the person she was talking to. Elizabeth felt bad about what she did. Wanted to say it was not right. She thought about the person and how they felt when Elizabeth ran away. Elizabeth wanted to make things okay, and that is why she said, "Sorry, you really had every right to feel completely overwhelmed by the situation. I mean, it is totally understandable that you felt that way because things were probably really tough for you at that time, and it is okay to admit that you felt overwhelmed by the thing, and I think that everyone would have felt the same way if they were in your shoes, so it is completely normal that you felt overwhelmed." She looked at James. "I did not give you a chance to tell me what you think. I did not give us a chance to see what happens with the two of us." She turned around to face James. "James, I want you to know something about me. I am really scared. I am scared of getting hurt by James. I am scared of not knowing what to do with James. I am scared of caring about James much that if I lose James, it will be very bad." For me, James said that he is really scared. He is scared that you will think he is not worth all the trouble. He is scared that his life will be too much for you to handle. He is scared that he has already lost you before they even got started with the relationship. James is scared that you will walk away from him because of all the things that are going on in his world. Elizabeth reached for his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against her skin. She said to him, "I talked to a patient tonight, a woman who shared something with me. This patient told me that regret lasts longer than heartbreak. I think this patient is right. I do not want to spend the rest of my life thinking about what could have been with Elizabeth and him, because Elizabeth and him could be really happy together. Elizabeth is scared of regret, not heartbreak, because regret is what stays with you forever." James looked at me. So what are you saying? He really wanted to know what I was talking about. There was hope in James's eyes. He was waiting for my answer. "I am saying that I want to be brave. I want to take a chance. I want you, James. Not the things you have, like your money, or the fact that you are important. I want the person who talked with me for 5 nights about what's important to me and what I want to do with my life and what I am afraid of. The person who really looked at me and understood me for the time in a very long time." James pulled Elizabeth close to him. He put his arms around her. It felt like he was where he was supposed to be. He said, "I choose you to Elizabeth. Every day, I choose Elizabeth." James and Elizabeth sat on that park bench for hours. They talked about the complications they would have to deal with. James said he would do his best to keep his life and his relationship with Elizabeth separate. Elizabeth said she would try to understand his world even when it was too much for her. James and Elizabeth agreed to take things one step at a time. They wanted to build a relationship based on James and Elizabeth being honest with each other and talking to each other.
6 months later, Elizabeth stood in the park, but everything was really different now. James was standing beside her, their fingers holding on to each other. They had been through a lot, like all the crazy things that happened when people found out that Elizabeth and James were a couple. They had to deal with people talking about them all the time. They had to figure out how to live together. Elizabeth and James had to balance their work lives because Elizabeth had a demanding job and James had a very demanding job too. They found something beautiful too. The love they shared became stronger every time they got through something. Being together made them both better people. It all started in a hospital room. Then it grew into something amazing that neither of them thought would happen. The love they had for each other just kept getting stronger. The partnership, between them was a thing. Elizabeth said to him, "You know what I figured out?" Then she leaned her head against his shoulder. "What's that?" "That night you came into the hospital I thought I was just doing what I had to do. I was taking care of you like I take care of any patient. That was not really what was happening. The hospital was where you came that night. That is where we helped each other. You helped me to feel things again. I helped you to be a person again. The hospital is a place where people go to get better. That night the hospital is where you and I got better together." James kissed the top of her head. He said that she was the accident that he ever had. James really meant it when he said that she was the accident that he ever had. Elizabeth laughed. She said that is a bad thing to say about something like that. Elizabeth thought that was a thing to say. Maybe. But it's true. As Elizabeth walked through the park with the person she loved, the autumn sun warmed Elizabeth's face. Elizabeth thought about the late-night conversations Elizabeth had with this person. Elizabeth also thought about the time they had an argument at the coffee shop. Elizabeth remembered the fear Elizabeth felt. The courage Elizabeth had to keep going. Elizabeth thought about the choice to love this person even though it was not easy and there were risks involved. The autumn sun and the beautiful park made Elizabeth think about all these moments and how they had led Elizabeth and this person to where they were. The greatest love stories do not always start with love at sight. They can start with something simple like being kind to someone. It is about seeing the person and being brave instead of scared. The greatest love stories can start in unusual places like between a nurse and a patient. This can happen during the hours when everyone else is asleep. The greatest love stories can begin between a nurse and a patient. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they last a lifetime.